Someone released the free and open source RTS game 0AD on Steam without speaking to the developers. A few days ago, the developers of 0AD, Wildfire Games, were surprised to see that their game was now available on Steam. Of course, they weren't the ones who put it there, and no one had contacted them about doing so. Steam has since taken down the game listing. This is the page you see for the game now, and clearly it's not available anymore. We can see some more info for it on the SteamDB page. So the game was listed for $10 in the US, and as you can see, it's claimed to be developed by Wildfire Games, which is true, and it's published by Public Games Distribution. Now, we can see that this is the only game that they've ever published. A few people did end up purchasing the game, as we can see on the chart here. It had a peak concurrent play count of 9 players. And so that means whoever published it earned about $100 for this, possibly more, since most people don't immediately play games that they purchase. Now, if we take a look at the history, we can see that this has actually been in development, or rather this store listing has been in development for about a month now. The first real activity was on October 4th, and since then there have been a few changes. At some point, we can see that they actually removed information about the game being released under the GPL license. Now, why they did that, I can only speculate, but if I had to guess, I assume that it's because they didn't want people to know that the game was also freely distributed and that they were charging for it here on Steam, even though a free copy is available. Now, this game is normally available for free on Linux through various distribution methods, including Snapcraft. So we can see here on the Snap Store, on the games section, it's actually highlighted right at the very top. There's this big banner advertising it. It's available in other places as well, such as Flatpak. We can see it's right here on the list. Now, repackaging applications for distribution is nothing new in the Linux and the broader open source community. As an example, take a look at Minecraft here on Flathub. So this is an unofficial wrapper that's not supported by Mojang. And yet, this isn't something that's rare or even that uncommon. It's something that's actually fairly prevalent within open source. Just as another random example, on App Image Hub, I found this unofficial port, or not port, I guess you'd call it a wrapper for Pokete, that releases it as an app image. And again, this was done without the original developers even necessarily being aware of it. If you really think about it, that's what software distributions do. Ubuntu, for example, the Linux distribution, is just a collection of software that's hosted across several different repositories. Some of the software in those repositories is written by Canonical, but most of it isn't. And this isn't the first time that there's been conflict between software developers and distributors. Remember this open letter from the GTK developer community? Please don't theme our apps. There's an entire site for this, stopthemingmy.app. The issue here was that developers were really annoyed with distributions using custom themes that would break their apps, and they would get complaints about it from users. The interests of developers and app distributors are often misaligned. Developers want more users and more contributors, and they want their app to work exactly as they intended. But distributors have a slightly different goal. They want the software to be cohesive and part of this larger whole, which is the software distribution. That might include things like custom themes, app icons, and just generally trying to make the software fit in ways that the developers didn't intend. Some open source repositories are taking steps to separate software provided by the developers versus that packaged by a third party. Flathub, for example, started a project to verify first-party apps and even put them into a separate repository from the rest. So as you can see, this initiative was started in January of this year, and so it's been going on for a while. There's a more detailed posting about this, including the work that they want to do. But the gist of it is they want to mark apps as verified if they're actually published by the developers, and possibly even move those to a separate repository. So the question is, if repackaging software is so prevalent in the free and open source community, what's wrong with repackaging a game like this? Well, according to the developers, whoever uploaded the game impersonated the developers and claimed to hold the copyright for the game, which is a requirement for publishing the game on Steam. But the GPL license that the game is released under doesn't actually give you the copyright for the licensed work. It only gives you permission to use it and distribute it in certain limited ways, those ways being the fundamental software freedoms. Okay, so that's clearly wrong, but if this person didn't impersonate the devs, then would there actually be a problem? The devs mention issues of server load and increased moderation requirements, but these same issues would appear from this software package appearing in other places, like Flathub, for example. And even a promotion like the banner at the top of the Snapcraft games section could also result in these issues of increased server load. So it's not really something that's unique to the game being released on Steam. They also bring up a legal argument about linking the Steam SDK, but I'm not knowledgeable enough to comment on the actual legal implications of that. Now, you might say that the problem is that they're charging for this software, but charging for a package on a certain platform is also perfectly acceptable within the open source community. Take a look at Krita, for example. It's a free and open source digital art application that is available to download for no cost. However, it's also available on these platforms for a certain fee. So if I open up the Microsoft Store, for example, we can see that it costs money. And same thing on Steam. Again, you can't just download it for free. You might say that the difference here is that the Krita team gets the money instead of some random person getting paid for the work of others. But if you take a look at the announcement from the Krita team, the reasoning that they give is that publishing Krita on the store, this being the Steam store as well as the Windows store, takes time. So the implication there is that the costs cover the development time spent on packaging and not on the development of the application. So the person who charged money for 0AD similarly got paid for the work that they did to package the game for a Steam release. Now, should they have done that? Well, probably not, but they do have the right to do that. The Libre software community is very strict about enforcing the freedoms provided by the licenses that they use, and so they should be consistent and recognize that those freedoms do give people the right to repackage software and charge for it like this. So I think if you want your philosophy to be taken seriously, then being consistent in how you apply it is a very important step.